Habitation Station is gonna be the map, and a PvP is on the cards. This is, of course, the final game of this afternoon, and it is already won by Axiom. They're 2-0 up, but all three games are played for the pride, for the honour, and for the chance to make the scoreline look a bit more awesome. Spawning up in the top left-hand position, representing Axiom, it's the blue Protoss player, CranK. His opponent, to the top right, the red Protoss player. He represents Jex. It's Gimme. This game is being played out on the North American servers, so to minimize the lag for the Korean players. CranK is of course based in Korea, as we heard. Gimme is based in Europe, so between those two, hopefully they do have pretty similar latency to the servers, and therefore neither player is at a disadvantage because of lag. Not too much going on early game. Gateway coming down from Gimme. CranK also getting down his gateway. Neither player opting for the proxy 2 gate, although CranK did check for it. You can actually get a really nice proxy 2 gate location in the corner of your opponent's main base on Habitation Station, which is really hard to scout for if your opponent doesn't actually come over and check. The way you do it is you put a pylon right in the corner, and then 2 gates there, and then you laugh. You laugh hysterically as your zealots tear through their main. Anyway, double gases coming down now from Gimme. CranK, he's only going for the single assimilator. That means that he's going to have less option to tech. But overall their gas count could end up relatively the same. It depends whether Gimme decides to put 2 or 3 probes into each gas. If there's only 2 in each, it's not a massive commitment to tech. It's just a decent gas income and a relatively quick tech up. So probably a mothership core quite fast, maybe a sentry out of the gateway. If there's 3 though, that says tech as fast as possible. Not what we're getting though, so not something to concern about. CranK, he's adding in his second gas now. He's already got 3 probes in 1. Gonna be looking to get some more tech out himself. PvP, of course, is less of a coin flip than it used to be because of the mothership core and because of a good couple of catch-all builds that quite a few players have been using, whereby they try and just deal with anything that their opponent could be throwing out. Such builds includes an early Stargate, maybe a DT expand was really popular a couple of weeks ago, but seems to have died off a little now. The double gate, which we're seeing out of Gimme, is also a hugely popular build. This is an example of that is catch-all builds, which try to make sure that there's nothing too deadly happening or you're not going to get killed instantly by, say, some 3-gate pressure. Mothership Core is out now, is able to take a quick little snipe off of the scouting probe. So first blood goes to Jex, and of course Gimme. CranK though, he retaliates, kills the scouting probe of his opponent while taking his own expansion. And this is something that for the moment Gimme hasn't scouted, isn't aware that this is coming down. So the scouting stalker and mothership core are going to get a little peek at it. There should also be a second stalker on its way and a third one. Warp gate tech being chrono boosted. Meanwhile CranK, he's sitting just on the lone gateway, and that means he doesn't actually have too much to defend with. Sending a probe down a bit of a long way. This is a sneaky probe coming down towards this third, out of the way of anything that could be coming to meet it. Who knows what that's going to be doing, probably a proxy pylon. Meanwhile CranK, he adds in his robotics facility. Whereas Gimme decides to go for the Stargate. Different tech already. Going to be very interesting to see how these two interact. The Robo Bay means that you've got options. Well, for a start, you can get observers out. We'll probably see an observer come out first, just to make sure that there's no risk of DTs or something like that. The follow-up will probably be a couple of Immortals, just to help against Blinkstalker plays, and eventually going into Colossi if we get that far. CranK though, he's harassing the middle line of his opponent with his mothership core, which has actually managed to get 2 kills, which is really nice. Needs to be a bit careful with it though, it's getting a little low on health, backs away, may actually go down even with the mass recall, just survives, 4 HP there. Greedy play by CranK. Did pay off though, 3 worker kills and he's got a 9 probe lead in total, plus his natural base is up a hell of a lot sooner, and as such, he's going to be able to produce 2 probes simultaneously up against his opponent's single probe. But an Oracle is being chrono boosted out at the moment by the Jex player, and that means that it can start harassing pretty damn soon. Unfortunately though, it's been scouted, the Stargate, and as such, we see that CranK is just being nice and careful. Does trap 2 Stalkers in his natural base, feeling confident with this fight. 4 force fields used in total. A couple more Stalkers were trying to come through, but with the good force fields, 2 taken out for very minimal losses on CranK's side, and the rest have no choice but to retreat. However, Oracle coming forward. There's only a single Stalker there at the moment, but 2 more getting warped in. This Oracle gonna have to back out, otherwise he'd take way too much damage. Would only probably secure 1 or 2 kills. Playing it nice and safe, playing it careful. We've got, of course, the assimilators now coming down here from CranK, his 3rd and 4th gases, whereas Gimme has only just now secured up his natural base, so no gas there as of yet. The observer count is only at 1. The Oracle came back in, is going to try and kill a couple more probes, managing to get 3 worker kills. CranK though, he's still up by 8 workers in total. Fairly big lead, and a fairly substantial lead in a PvP. He does though have his own robotics facility coming down, and that means he should avoid getting too far behind in tech, especially since CranK only got an observer out at the moment and doesn't yet have his first immortal. So good work here by Gimme, just trying to stay level, playing some good builds. He's actually going to take a tech lead, getting that robotics bay out exceptionally fast. CranK though, he's aiming towards a forge, so he's going to get and secure an upgrade lead, and that upgrade lead, it's just going to get bigger and bigger the longer that Gimme doesn't have his own forge down. Gimme can't really afford gas-wise to get upgrades yet, because these additional gases only just now coming into play. CranK still doing a good job defending against this Oracle. Needs to just make sure that he uses these Stalkers. 2 more kills for the Oracle, but it stays alive. And an Oracle that has got 5 kills and isn't dead can potentially do more damage later on. CranK now adding in the Twilight Council. This is going to allow him to get the 2-2 upgrades and 3-3 upgrades. Also gives him access to Blink, as well as Charge. And also Templar Archives and a Dark Shrine. So he's got lots of different tech parts coming out from that. Whereas Gimme is already committed to going Colossi. Colossi in PvP are really solid. They can do a lot of damage, especially if you get a few of them out. Kind of about 3 or 4, they start becoming really potent. But I think we're going to get a charge on Archon build actually coming out of CranK here. We'll wait to see whether we get charged. But with the Templar Archives coming down and a lot of warp gates, that's a really nice timing he can hit. Just wait to see whether or not we do get charged. Interestingly, he's also adding in a Stargate. Not something that I was expecting. Decent number of Immortals also down. Going to be really excited to see what CranK does with that Stargate as part of this build. Gimme has the double forges coming out though, and this means that he can catch up and actually overtake in upgrades over CranK if he just stays on this single forge. Gateways now finishing up, the Templar Archives finished up. Charge is on its way, so it should be a Charge on Archon style play. How that's going to fare though will be quite interesting, because for the moment there's only 1 Colossus out, but then there's a lot more getting Chrono boosted through. Double Immortal drop going to be used by CranK here. Of course, 2 Immortals, 1-shot workers, which is always good fun. Really scary, and they can back out pretty fast, and since there isn't really any anti-air in the army of Gimme at the moment, just those 3 Stalkers and 2 Sentries, they should be fairly safe. CranK going up for the Fleet Beacon. If he makes carriers, he makes me a very happy caster. Pylon getting worked down here. That will supply block Gimme. Gonna go for another pylon that's actually powering 4 gateways, which would be pretty huge. The Immortals need to be careful. They are picked up though, just after the shields go down. That pylon is such a big target. If that goes down, it'd actually be massive, because there's so much being powered by it. It is truly an Artosis pylon. Meanwhile, Fleet Beacon is now finished up. A couple of Archons in the mix. Tempest going to be coming through. So Tempest are the smart choice. And that pylon, wow, does actually go down. 4 gateways now depowered, and a couple of additional pylons being added in here. Gimme realizing he's in a bit of a dangerous spot. The Immortals dropping down. They of course 3-shot Stalkers with the +1 attack. Big warping of Zealots though coming down from Gimme. And Zealots are very strong up against Immortals, because Immortals deal bonus damage to armored, and the more hits you get against them, the quicker their hardened shields come down. And because Zealots do 2 hits per attack, it's a lot better and more efficient way to deal with that armor. The Immortal drop though still ongoing. Gimme does have his Mothership Core in place, so can float an overcharge if needed, but note these Immortals out of range at the moment. Down goes another pylon, depowers another gateway, Storm currently being researched. The Immortals continue on their pressuring build. Continuing to harass, taking down another pylon, may even depower all of this, delaying Storm even further. The Mothership Core trying to come over, all of these pylons getting killed, and Gimme supply blocked yet again. CranK being ruthless in this build. A Mothership Core takes a long time to kill off Immortals, and the Immortals just going hard against this Templar Archives. Probably not going to be able to snipe. Oh, actually, they do manage to snipe it down. Great pickoff, and both survive. Brilliant play coming down by CranK here, and Gimme is having to be very defensive. CranK still up by 10 workers. Both players have their third secured now, but the Tempest count is getting a little bit more scary. 2 on the field, a third one on its way, plus a second Stargate now for CranK. Tempest incredibly strong up against Colossi, and that's because they can do their air attack against Colossus, which means they deal bonus damage because Colossi are massive. CranK still continuing in with this Immortal play, whooping in a couple of Zealots too. But with the Photon Overcharge and the army coming back, they're saved pretty easily, but Gimme, regardless, is still supply blocked again, and this is always annoying for him. We do have still continual probe production coming down from both players. CranK, though, taking quite a large lead in probes and has maintained that throughout the game, as well as taking about nearly a third of the losses of his opponents. So he's trading more cost effectively while mining more. Generally, that's a good indicator that CranK is ahead, if the supply alone wasn't. But Gimme, he's holding on. He's doing everything that he can. Nice little Zealot harassment, nice little defensive plays here. Taking bases as quickly as possible to try and just last a little longer. Unfortunately, these Immortals continuing to be a bit of a nightmare, but one dies, the second one goes down, and Gimme gets his first break of the game so far. Able to take down those Immortals nice and quick, saving himself for a little later. Nexus at the gold base, on its way out now for CranK. He's got good macro, keeping his economy low, or his bank low, whereas Gimme, he's actually building up quite a large mineral bank. Could look to invest in a few more gateways. He's currently only sitting at 6 compared to the 8 of CranK. But more importantly, he doesn't really have any other production facilities, bar the robotics facility. He's also got one of these warp gates still depowered. CranK coming back with 2 new Immortals now. Gonna depower the Cybernetics Core and the gateway. And this is really a lesson from CranK to Gimme that, remember, you do not want to have Artosis pylons. Cybernetics Core not getting focused yet, instead more pylons getting prioritized, preventing these forges from potentially even getting much more coming through, as well as a good number of worker kills coming out. CranK as well, now into the third base with a lot of Zealots. There's a decent amount of defense there, so that should be alright. The big story is, what can these Immortals do? They're going to start working on pylons more. The Zealots still being a little bit irritating, just slashing away at a pylon. CranK really likes killing off pylons today, it would appear. Photon Overcharge being used there by the main Nexus. We've got a couple of additional gases being taken here too by CranK. He's up at 4 bases, and that's a gold base too, which gives him a good economy. CranK nearly maxed out now. He's got a good number of Tempests, sitting at 12 Tempests. That's a lot of them. These 2 Colossi probably aren't going to really know what hit them. If I remember correctly, it only takes 6 Tempests to one-shot a Colossus. Back now goes these Immortals. They've depowered yet another gateway. CranK just being relentless with this. We're about 1945 through this game, and Gimme is attempting to secure up his 4th base now. He's down though, still by what is 7 workers unfortunately, and has been around that amount throughout the game, so CranK has had a better economy the whole game. Nearly loses his War Prism though with those 2 Immortals. Quick little bit of micro is going to be able to save it. Gimme, of course, is a Masters player, but CranK a GM player, so CranK is favoured in this series. Voidway actually going to intercept this Warp Prism now. Warp Prisms are armoured, so take a lot of damage. Boom, down it goes. Plus those 2 Immortals. Nice pick off there by Gimme. A lot of damage done to his opponent. Both players being a bit more cautious, but I imagine that CranK is going to be looking to go in a bit more aggressive, because he's got a lot of stuff now. A lot of Tempest. This 4th base, mining a huge amount for CranK at the moment. CranK getting +2 air attack down, already got that +1 air attack. Meanwhile, +1 air attack still hasn't commenced or continued from Gimme after losing that pylon that was powering the cybernetics core. Stalker's leading the charge for CranK at the moment. The mass glow of all of his Tempest still sitting around. Huge number of Archons in the mix as well for Gimme. That hallucinated Phoenix really didn't know what hit it. Good scouting coming down though. Gimme is now adding in some more gateways, which is good because he's got a relatively high bank that he needs to try and spend. CranK though, biding his time, not wanting to take the engagement quite yet, waiting for more upgrades. Knows that this base down in the bottom right's up. CranK just sitting there with a probe. Sees the 3 cannons coming down. Couple of additional cannons at the back. I don't know if CranK can see. Yeah, CranK can see that pylon. Quick warp in from Gimme as well. Means that that proxy is not going to be able to do too much. CranK now up to a hideous number of Tempest. 18 of them on the field. That is truly terrifying. It's pretty much... Okay, CranK's army right now consists of 8 Zealots, 2 Immortals, 2 Archons, 1 Stalker, 3 Sentries, and 18 Tempest. He's just deciding that his opponent is not allowed pylons this game. He's just like, pylons? Nope. No pylons. Only I am allowed pylons in this game. More damage being done. 3 more Tempests come through. 21 Tempests on the field, and they are just decimating this base. The cybernetics core about to fall. Massive supply block for Gimme. His main Nexus is about to take a thorough beating, I imagine. Meanwhile, down to the south, 1 pylon does get taken out. Revenge is coming through. And boom. Ouch. Nexus falls. These probes, bit of overkill on them. But, actually, Gimme getting a nice bit of counter damage done. Takes out CranK's third. There's a lot of Archons, a lot of Zealots, and a lot of Voidways in this composition. And CranK, he's played a brave game. He's gone through an awful lot of Tempests. He's also now going up into the Dark Shrine. And interestingly, Gimme only has cannons for detection, which he only currently has at his 4th. He's also taking a 5th. No cannons down there yet, though. No observer on the map, but oh my goodness, engagement in the center of the map. The 21 Tempest raining down terror. The Voidway's trying to do something good here, but there's just so much damage. The Archons, though, on the ground are pretty effective up against Tempest. They're getting some nice damage through. 1 Colossus still stands for Gimme, but the Archons are starting to get melted just by the sheer number of units CranK currently has. Those sentries dying a painful death. The Colossus also getting destroyed. And a Zealot warping in the main base is killing everything. Gimme didn't know Tempest were that good. Tempest are that good if you've got that many of them. CranK confirmed, Tempest is imbalanced. Do you know what else was imbalanced? One of Gimme's Colossi. So, CranK now marching, well, not really marching, floating forward, ready to annihilate everything. Slowly taking down the assimilator, taking down the probes. The Nexus is probably going to fall too. This is just painful to watch. And Gimme as well, being a really good sportsman, thanking Axiom for taking part in these games. It was awesome for them to do it, and of course CranK showing the fantastic manners as well. Both of these two teams have played incredibly well. Axiom are able to take it though, 3-0 in this best of 3, so congratulations to them.